I'm Jeremy Wade, biologist, extreme angler, monster hunter. I've traveled the world to solve seemingly inexplicable freshwater deaths, uncovering monstrous culprits lurking below the surface. Now I'm on the trail of the most brutal attack I've ever heard of.
It's extremely gruesome.
A man killed when something in the water ripped off his face. To track down this culprit, I have to journey to the remote heart of South America,
Nearly the whole country is blanketed in rainforest.
where the battle for survival is fiercest.
I was expecting to go in there and investigate the skeleton, but there's nothing left.
Have I waded in too deep?
This could in fact have been a murder.
But once I'm on the trail of a river monster, there's no turning back. I've now been traveling to South America for 20 years. And whenever I return, I find new horrors hiding in its waters.
I recently came across a grim report from only a year ago. A young man was swimming across a South American river.
Suddenly, he started struggling and then disappeared below the surface. He was only underwater for a matter of moments before being pulled out, but it was already too late. He was dead.
But this was no drowning, as he had highly unusual injuries. According to the report, something under the water tore his face off, while leaving the rest of his body untouched.
The river monster behind this attack sounds truly terrifying, but I don't have much to go on. The report is brief, with barely any detail.
In this internet age, we're used to having all the information we want at our fingertips. This story, however, comes from a part of the world beyond its reach. When you're dealing with an information black hole, the only way of delving deeper is to go there.
All I know is that the death happened on the Rio Yata, which flows through northern Bolivia, a country I've never been to. This is a very remote region, practically cut off from the rest of Bolivia by impenetrable forest. The best way for me to get there is to fly to Brazil, then drive the perilous roads to the river that forms the border. This is a very poor and dangerous part of the world, where cocaine smuggling touches everything. In the near absence of roads, rivers are the main highways, especially for organized crime.
There are miles and miles of river where anybody can slip across unnoticed.
As soon as I cross over into Bolivia, I start asking questions.
Una preguntita. ¿Ustedes saben algo del accidente aquí en este río o año pasado?
But nobody has heard about the death I'm here to investigate.
No? No of you? No, she doesn't know anything. Hasn't heard anything at all.
The only lead I can follow is the river itself. The Rio Yata twists and turns for 650 miles through dense jungle, and the fatal attack happened somewhere along here. My plan is to work my way along the river, stopping at any sign of habitation along its banks, asking questions and seeking clues in my mission to solve this murder mystery. My guide is Luis, the only motorboat owner I could find who's willing to take me through this wilderness.
This river hasn't been explored by scientists. Nobody really knows what's down there, so it could be the perfect place for an as yet undiscovered monster to be lurking.
I need to keep an open mind as to the killer's identity. I want to get my line into the water and start gathering leads. no matter how small. So far, I've no local advice to tap into, but I know that a tight bend in the river is a good bet for beginning to bring in whatever lives here, predator or prey.
The chances are there's deepish water down here. There's a few snags, sunken branches on the edge. It's the kind of thing that might make fish feel confident, the fact there's refuge nearby, also the depth of water.
There's a good chance that the killer I'm after is a carnivorous predator, as it tore off the victim's face. So I'm using a whole fish for bait.
Bait is a very precious commodity. It doesn't last very long in this heat. There's a lot of hope resting on this fish here.
It doesn't disappoint. It looks like some kind of freshwater stingray.
I'm going to try and slide it on to the beach here.
It may not be the biggest monster in the river, but stingrays are the most feared fish in South America. They're responsible for countless injuries every year. Stab-proof gloves will protect me from its venomous, barbed tail.
This is a creature that is potentially very dangerous to people. If you stepped on it and this thing stuck in your leg, it's very, very painful. But if you don't treat the wound, that can become septic. And the worst case scenario there is actually for that to go gangrenous. Remove the limb. If you don't do that, that's fatal as well. The main one's about 4 inches long, and there's a small one coming through underneath. And I think the principle is a bit like what happens in sharks. When their teeth fall out, they're replaced by other ones coming from behind. And I think when this main spine falls out, gets damaged, there's another one waiting to take its place.
But as dangerous as its tail is, this stingray doesn't have the hardware to tear somebody's face off.
It hasn't really got teeth. Well, it has, but they're so close together that it forms almost like a grinding plate. There's a bit of roughness there, almost like tiles, with each tile slightly pointed, and the actual jaw is quite muscular. It's got good crushing force there.
Without the weaponry to rip flesh from bone, the river stingray is off my suspect list. But what other deadly creatures live alongside the ray in these murky waters? A flat-whiskered catfish.
This has got teeth, but I mean they're not very big. They're very, very small, very close together. The effect is more like sandpaper, something like that. It's rasping, quite rough to the touch. So there's no way that this fish could cause the type of injuries that I've been hearing about.
But a nice plump catfish might well be on the menu for a bigger, more voracious predator, which could be lurking nearby. Then, after the initial flurry of activity, it all goes quiet. We've not made it far enough along the river to reach a village in daylight. We need to find a safe place to set up camp for the night.
Looks like someone's been here before. That's going to be perfect for the hammock, I think.
I'm taking every opportunity to find out what patrols these waters. I'll leave a couple of lines out overnight, right next to my hammock. Although my focus is firmly on the dangers in the water, I also have to be wary of what could be in the jungle. Not just armed drug runners, but the wildlife as well.
Just looking at the bank here, and I'm a little bit wary because there's some caiman footprints and slide marks. Something has moved over there.
Black caimans are South American relatives of the alligator. They can grow up to 19 feet long and have no problem hunting in the dark. So far, the Rio Yata hasn't given up any clues to the fate of the man with the missing face. But like illicit goods, news travels fast along rivers. And if the gruesome death happened anywhere nearby, a local fisherman would probably be the first to hear.
Somebody here who looks like he's fishing, so I'm going to nip in and just have a bit of a chat. Now, scientists might not know what's under the water here, but the locals tend to have a pretty good idea. Es posible encostar?
First meetings can be tense here. Drug running is commonplace, so the locals are wary of outsiders.
¿Ha pescado algo?
Nada.
Nada?
He seems willing to talk, so I ask him about the grisly death.
No conozco nada.
No, okay. No, he says he doesn't know anything about the accident last year.
But he has heard of another fatality caused by a huge fish.
There's one that will attack people.
So could this be the face ripper? I'm in remote northern Bolivia, investigating the death of a man who had his face torn off by something lurking in the Rio Yata. I'm here to find out what kind of creature is capable of such a horrific attack. A solitary fisherman may have my first clue.
I've just said, are there any dangerous fish in here? He says, yes, there's one that will attack people and can drown them.
A child was recently killed by one along the river here. Two boys went down to the river's edge to check on a line that had been set the night before. As one of them pulled in the line, his feet got tangled up in the coils. Suddenly, the line snapped tight as a huge fish took off. The little boy was no match for this fish's strength, and just like the defaced man, they couldn't get help to him in time.
They pulled on the line, shot the fish, and when they pulled it in, the missing lad was actually in its stomach. I've asked him to draw it because local names are very confusing. They don't often tell you very much. In the absence of a scientific name, in the absence of the actual body to look at, a good description with a drawing is hopefully going to tell me something.
No scales. It just has skin. So that means it's probably a catfish of some sort. Big head.
Aquí en esta aleta que lleva encima, así. Lleva una larga, tiene una antenita.
Okay. Right, he's saying it's got a big tentacle coming off the dorsal fin. No, that's pretty much a giveaway. That sounds like, if it's the size that he's saying as well, that sounds like it's a Piraiba.
Here we go.
This story sounds unlikely, but I've long known that Piraiba can be lethal.
The real monster of the Amazon.
After investigating a story of a fisherman swallowed by one. But despite their size and power, they have tiny teeth packed into rough pads. Although a big one could swallow a person, they're not capable of clinically removing somebody's face. Before I continue on my way, the fisherman is quick to remind me that I must go carefully.
Yeah, he's saying you've got to be careful in this river. He said there's lots of things in this water that can attack you and that are potentially dangerous.
I continue my journey, bend by snaking bend, down this 650-mile-long river, on the lookout for any clues. and fishing every likely spot, day and night. I also talk to any villagers or fishermen I come across, until finally I meet someone who's heard about the death.
Sentido aquí o más abajo? Lejos o cerca? Lejito. Well, I'm going in the right direction. He says it's downstream from here, but he says it's quite a way.
He tells me a bit more detail about the death.
What he heard was that just bone was left, everything else was eaten. Another fairly gruesome detail in addition to what I've heard already.
This is a significant piece of information. Whatever attacked the man didn't just make a grab for his head, it sounds like it was actually feeding on him. I've been travelling the river for 3 days now, and I haven't caught anything capable of doing that kind of damage. But all that could be about to change.
What's this? What's this?
I'm deep in the remote jungles of Bolivia, investigating the death of a man who had his face bitten off by something in the water.
Oh, what's this? What's this?
Oh! But so far, I haven't caught anything with the teeth to do the job.
Here we go, here we go. Red-bellied piranha. Ah, there's a very audible crunch going on there. This is the most notorious of the piranhas. It's got very sharp teeth, which interlock a bit like scissor blades. And looking at this one, what's very characteristic, it's got a very solid, broad head. And what this largely means is there's a lot of musculature under the gills there in the sort of the cheek region behind the eye. That's the force behind these cutting blades.
They may have the hardware, but after 20 years of fishing in South America, I've come to the conclusion that most of the time their bloodthirsty reputation isn't much more than Hollywood hype. To prove it, I've jumped into piranha-infested rivers. I've even sat in a pool full of them without getting so much as a nip.
These piranhas were tearing into a piece of dead meat just a couple of minutes ago, but they're just not interested in me.
And dead meat is the clue. Few aquatic hunters would turn down an easy meal of a dead animal. And when I investigated a story of a whole bus full of people reportedly eaten alive by piranhas, it turned out that the wounds were inflicted after they drowned.
I've not heard, as yet, a confirmed report of these actually killing a healthy adult.
So piranhas aren't on my suspect list. But somewhere in this river, there's a freshwater killer, and I'm determined to find it. With my guide Louise, I travel further down the river without seeing any sign of human habitation, until we finally come across a small village. I still don't know where the attack took place or even the victim's name, so I'm hoping somebody here can start filling in the blanks.
Senora. Doesn't look like there's anyone at home here.
The first few people I speak with know nothing,
Okay.
but my persistence pays off.
¿Usted sabe algo?
Sí. ¿Sobre de qué? Más o menos de lo que ha sucedido.
Sí.
Oscar Barbosa es.
I've got a name and a place. The man's name was Oscar Barbosa.
De aquí de la comunidad Rosario del Llata hasta Santa Teresita dicta un día.
It was on the river here, a village called Santa Teresita.
Sí.
And that's about a day away from here, traveling on the river. Gracias.
Okay.
I'm finally on the right track. I've been told that the village I'm looking for is at a ferry crossing.
So
So I think this is it. I think this is the place where it happened. This is the place where I'm getting off the boat. This is the village where Oscar died, and if I'm going to get answers anywhere, it's going to be here.
But very quickly I discover that Santa Teresita is practically abandoned. There's very little employment in these remote villages, and many people have to leave for weeks at a time to follow seasonal work. I find a few people left who have heard of the attack, but they weren't in the village at the time and seem reluctant to talk about it.
I'm having trouble finding anybody who saw what happened. There's actually very few people around. There's lots of houses, but a lot of them seem to be empty. I'm just thinking if it happened on a day like today, there wouldn't really be many people around to witness it. But what I have heard, second-hand, is that apparently Oscar wasn't from here. He was on his way through.
They say he came from a town called Guayra-Marin. I'm told that one minute he was on the ferry boat, and the next they were dragging his body from the water. There's a villager who saw the whole thing and recovered his body. But he's not here now, and they don't know when he'll be back. He says if I want to know more, perhaps I should try to find Oscar's family in Guayra-Marin. So the only way to push my investigation on is to leave behind the attack site I've only just discovered and head for the town. But I don't have much choice if I want to get to the bottom of this case. I now have a name to go on. And when I get into town, I track down a man named Juan, a relative of Oscar's mother, who takes me to her house. This is a sensitive situation. She lost her son only 12 months ago. I don't want to intrude, so I decide to leave the camera outside. But I've hit a brick wall. She's refusing to talk about Oscar's death. Outside, Juan explains that it might not all be down to grief.
Obviously, part of this is the fact that she's still very upset by this. But he's also saying that he's heard that some people have been getting to her in some way, saying that she's not to talk about this to other people. So, you know, there's something going on here. Something's not quite right.
From past experience, I've found that people are normally grateful for any attempt to make sense of the death of a loved one. This reaction makes me suspect that something else could be going on. Juan points me in the direction of a local journalist named Dorian, who reported on Oscar's death at the time. I'm hoping he can help me with some details surrounding the case.
Las dificultades que hemos encontrado como comunicador social, primero encontrar la familia.
It sounds like he hit a number of dead ends when reporting this case. He had a name of a police officer who supposedly investigated. This person turned out not to exist. There was no police investigation, no report there. And also, the body was buried within 24 hours very quickly, considering that some of the family members had suspicions that this wasn't a straightforward accident, that this could in fact have been a murder.
But I'm not a homicide detective, and I'm beginning to wonder if I've waded in too far. I'm in Bolivia, investigating the brutal slaying of a man in the remote Rio Yata. So far, I've been working on the assumption that it was something in the water that did it. But I've just found out that all might not be what it seems.
Some of the family members had suspicions that this could in fact have been a murder.
This region of Bolivia is notorious for drug-running gangs. I've heard before of criminals taking bodies to the river to cover up evidence of a murder or the identity of a victim, using the river's scavengers to strip flesh from bone. Was Oscar literally defaced? If his death is connected to organized crime, then the fact that I'm digging up details of a murder could threaten my safety. I'm beginning to wonder whether it's too dangerous for me to continue my quest. The next morning, I decide I've come too far to give up now. I have to push on to find the truth. Juan told me Oscar's body was taken to the morgue here, but just as I gear myself up to head downtown, I'm stopped in my tracks. Overnight, Guayramerin has turned into a ghost town.
This isn't making a lot of sense. I'm very anxious to be getting out, talking to people, find out if this really is a case of human foul play, of murder. But it's weird. It's not Sunday, this is middle of the week, it's 10:25. There's nobody on the street. Well, I say nobody, there's military police, that's all. I can't go anywhere.
The soldiers on the corner have spotted me, and I find myself in front of the chief of police.
Censo de población y vivienda es.
He tells me that everybody in the whole country is under armed curfew, so that the government can keep track of all its citizens.
Everybody has to stay in their houses for 24 hours, they can't go anywhere. And even though I don't live here, that includes me, I've got to stay inside.
If I don't get off the streets now, I could be arrested. I've got no choice but to sit it out for another day. The next morning, I continue my investigation. I head to the hospital to see if anyone knows how Oscar met his gruesome end. I find Dr. Navarro, the man who signed Oscar's death certificate. The first thing he does is pull out a photo of Oscar's injuries.
This is not the kind of picture I'd want to show around, really. This is the evidence. It's purely the face. It's extremely gruesome. And he's never seen that before, where it's been such a localized attack, localized injury. It is really very horrific.
But did these injuries kill Oscar, or are they covering up evidence of a stabbing or shooting? Dr. Navarro says there was no evidence of murder. Oscar was definitely attacked and killed by something in the water. So how did Oscar die?
And the cause was blood loss. Once anything attacking gets beyond the soft tissue, all it's got to do is puncture one of these arteries, and what with the pressure of the blood behind it, somebody can actually bleed to death in a very short time.
From the bite marks left on Oscar's head, Dr. Navarro is in no doubt as to what did this. Piranhas. For years, it's been an article of faith for me that despite the hype, piranhas don't normally kill people. Dr. Navarro's findings potentially throw this into question. This is the first time I've seen such graphic, gruesome medical evidence of somebody being killed by piranhas.
Is it possible to say which type maybe was involved in it?
No es posible porque no tenemos los medios para poder determinar.
He's saying that there's no real way after the event that you can tell which type was responsible. They're all very voracious, but pointing the finger can't be done.
There are nearly 40 known species of true piranha in the world, some more aggressive than others. But none in my experience would normally do this. That makes me think that one of two things might have happened. Either something has changed the way the piranhas behave here, or the remote Rio Yata is home to a new ultra-aggressive species of piranha that I've never seen before. There's only one way to find out. Get back to Santa Teresita and get a line in the water. I'm told that just downstream from where Oscar died, there's a series of rapids where locals catch various different types of piranha. Maybe this is where I'll find the man killer.
So far I've been catching a variety of fish, but what I'm going to do now is specifically target piranhas. So I'm going to start off, I think, using an artificial bait, something which mimics a small fish and that sort of calls attention to itself in the water. And because anything that goes for that is likely to have teeth, then I've got about 10 inches of wire on the end there. Otherwise they just bite through the line.
My location is a half-built, abandoned hydroelectric dam.
There's a really nice slack on the edge of the rapid here. Classic predator ambush territory. Lots of white marks all over the rocks here, so the cormorants have been finding fish. I think it all looks pretty good.
But before I start fishing, something unusual catches my eye. Hundreds of tiny fish are making their way over the man-made rapids.
This is water that would just sweep me away, and here you've got these creatures mostly about an inch long, some of them are 2 or 3 inches, making their way up against the current.
A bite-sized snack for any piranha.
Right, that's some of the easiest fishing I've had for a little while. Oh, ah!
Only fast, powerful fish can survive in these rapids.
Oh! Something at it. Right, what's that? This is something.
A vampire fish, a saber-toothed, distant relation of the piranha. Some vampire fish grow up to 4 feet long. Their dagger-sharp fangs are tailor-made for impaling other fish in lightning-fast attacks. I've even seen them bite off more than they can chew in cannibalistic assaults on their own kind.
It's got another one down its throat.
Although it's got terrifying dental hardware, these teeth can't strip flesh from bone in the way that Oscar's attacker was able to do. But anything that can share the water with these must be an impressive predator in its own right.
I just saw a flash, something going for it. Hey, that's a fish. That's a red piranha. Not going to take any chances. I don't want my fingers too close to the teeth.
But nothing can prepare you for the unexpected. Other than controlling buoyancy, what else do piranhas use their swim bladders for? Find out right after this. Other than controlling buoyancy, what else do piranhas use their swim bladders for? The answer's communication. They vibrate them to make 2 different sounds. for warning off rivals. I'm in northern Bolivia, where a doctor has confirmed that piranhas attacked and killed a young man last year.
Y las pirañas.
For 20 years, I've believed that piranhas won't normally attack healthy living humans in a river. This is the first time I've ever come across medical proof of it happening. Could some type of ultra-aggressive piranha in these remote jungles be the culprit for the most gruesome death I've ever investigated?
Hey, that's a fish.
I'm trying to reel in the evidence when a searing pain shoots through my hand.
Ow! But I've just impaled myself on a treble there. That hook has gone right in my thumb. I've got to deal with that.
As the red-bellied piranha struggles, the hook digs deeper into my thumb.
It's the first time I've actually done that, but I have seen it happen to somebody else, and we had to give them half a bottle of whiskey and then hold him down on a table to pull it out.
I can't pull the hook straight out because the backwards-facing barb is dug right into my flesh.
Can you just hold the lure like that, where my fingers are?
While the soundman takes the weight of the fish off my thumb, I get to work with some pliers.
That hurt. I'm just letting that bleed because there's probably fish slime and all sorts in the wound. I'm just wondering if a little bit of human blood on this might be that extra little something.
All piranha species have an extremely acute sense of smell. It's thought they're able to detect a single drop of blood in 50 gallons of water. Will my blood attract something different onto the line?
That's interesting. That is different. That is different. This isn't a red-belly piranha. This is a black piranha. Compared to the red-belly, these are comparatively solitary, comparatively shy, but, well, you say shy, just look at the size of the lure that went for, about the same length as the fish itself.
These are the largest of the carnivorous piranhas. They're recognized as having the strongest bite, pound for pound, of any fish that's been measured. But these are solitary fish and don't hunt in packs. So I don't see how one black piranha could overwhelm Oscar and bite off his entire face. This isn't the mystery piranha I'm after. After this, the piranhas start coming thick and fast.
Revised technique of unhooking.
The river is teeming with them, but I haven't uncovered anything out of the ordinary. I'm not finding any evidence of a new ultra-aggressive species of piranha in the Rio Yata. Tracking down the pieces of this puzzle is proving harder than I expected, and I still don't have enough to build a clear picture of what really happened when Oscar Barbosa went into the water on that fateful day. I'm not finding the mystery fish I'm after, and I haven't heard about any more piranha attacks here since I arrived. But there's another place further north, where apparently there's been a recent spate of piranha attacks. I need to investigate whether some kind of new ultra-aggressive piranha could be behind these attacks as well. or whether something else is going on, to explain why piranhas are suddenly living up to their B-movie reputation and turning on humans. I'll go to any lengths to unravel a mystery that rewrites the rules. So I'm travelling to the site of the attacks, Suriname, on the northern coast of the continent. It's the smallest independent country in South America. Once a Dutch colony, it was established on the labour of African slaves. Suriname is a melting pot of cultures, including Amerindians and Maroon tribes, the descendants of African slaves who escaped into the forest. Nearly everyone lives on the coast, but some people eke out a living in its remote interior, and that's where the attacks have been reported. The quickest way in is by light aircraft.
Nearly the whole country is blanketed in pristine rainforest, and there's a very strong river culture here.
My destination is a village called Donderskamp.
I hear that everybody here has some story about piranha.
bit me, maybe I'll be dead.
She went swimming in the river here, and a piranha bit her on the leg.
Whatever's targeting the villagers here clearly has incredibly strong jaws.
Dion was swimming in the water. Apparently about the time this happened, various other people had been bitten, and people had warned him not to go in the water, but he was in there, and that's when he felt something. The piranha did take actually a bit of bone from the end of his toe there. There's quite a bit missing.
They're blaming piranhas for the attacks, but as to what type, in these murky waters there's just no way of knowing. What's clear, though, is that the villagers are very afraid of them. I'm keen to get on the river and see for myself. But before I set out, the locals suggest I get some protection from a maroon elder. Clearly, they think I need it. Maroon tribes practice a tribal religion called Winti, and they wear amulets called buoys to protect them from harm. I've been taken to the man who prepares the ingredients that give the amulet its power. It takes 7 days to make, and I'm coming along for the final stages.
So what's inside here? Various ingredients, what looks like ash, various medicinal herbs, 2 horseshoes, and some iron balls as well.
Yeah?
So the buoy has been put inside the pot along with all the various ingredients that were there, and the idea is now it's going to be cooked, and the buoy will absorb the powers of those ingredients.
I'm told to dip my fingers into the boiling concoction.
You can do it.
Okay. Piranha? No. Piranha? No, come bite me.
Yeah. Yes. Piranha.
So he's saying the piranha is a dangerous fish, but with the protection of this buoy, they will leave me alone. Without this, I could be in danger. Okay.
After some finishing touches, the buoy is ready to be put on my arm. The rationalist in me knows this whole thing doesn't stack up. But fishermen are a superstitious breed, and I'm no exception. A final dousing with alcohol, and the ceremony is complete.
The power of anything like this is largely the power of tradition, the power of belief that's behind it.
If nothing else, this ceremony shows there's a genuine fear of what's in the water here. but I still want to find out what it is. Just upstream from Donderskamp is a sluice. These eddies are ideal ambush spots for predatory fish. My leader is wrapped with flexible woven metal to prevent anything toothy from biting through it. But that's not stopping whatever's down here.
Right, this is wire I've got here. That's actually gone through that. Gone right through it. Ah!
And it doesn't happen just once.
Again, look at that. I've done it again. Ah! Don't believe it. That's 3 times. This is 50-pound braided wire. And it's just cut through it. It was on for a fraction of a second. Cut through metal.
The wire has been bitten through like it's cotton thread. If I fell in the water here, I could have chunks bitten out of me in seconds. Just as I think something's going to bite through my line again, I finally get a good hookup.
That feels like it's attached properly. Right, let's see.
And as I pull my catch in, I see the horrifying full effect of what's down there.
Oh, look, right.
I'm in Suriname, following up a lead that could explain the gruesome death of a young man, which is challenging what I thought I knew about piranhas.
Right, let's see. Okay. Hey, something went for that. Do you see that? But something went for it. Right. This is very interesting. Catfish. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that.
One fish slashed in half by another in a lightning-fast attack.
In the time that it took to bring that in, well, half of it's been taken. This has actually been bitten on the head as well, where there's bone, where it's harder tissue. I can see the signature here, I can see the semicircular bite marks, and you can actually even see the individual tooth marks here. So this is, a large fish, and it's just come in and it's just been repeatedly biting. This went from being a perfectly healthy fish to being half devoured in a matter of seconds. It's just one thing that needs to happen and it becomes a victim.
Like Oscar, 1 minute happily swimming, dead the next. What could be responsible? But after this explosion of activity, it all goes quiet.
This is very strange. I'm not even getting any touches now. It's as if they vanished. Either they're feeding with a vengeance or they're not. And there's no sort of halfway house. There's no half measures with them.
I haven't travelled all this way to give up on this ferocious predator now. The villagers told me there have been attacks all around here, and recently in the waters of a man-made lake called Brokopondo. When it was built in the 1960s, the dam flooded the valley and drowned the rainforest. We have to navigate between the skeletons of the trees. The water here is reasonably clear, so maybe I'll finally see the mystery attacker. If I can draw it to the surface. I spot the perfect place to try out some unorthodox fishing, where there's already signs of activity near the surface.
Put a bit of chicken skin in here. Got to use a bit of wire just to tie it on with. See what they do to it. And with a bit of luck, I can actually watch their response to the food. The smaller stuff on the surface.
Without hesitation, they go for the bait.
Oh, yes. Oh, there's no hook on here. And, right, that was the work of just a few seconds. Something grabbed that. Should put that back in again, see if they're interested in the last fragment. Yeah, there we go. I'm probably seeing about a dozen down there at the moment. They're just dark shapes that, there we go, that's another one's got it, Here we go. And another. Look at that, they really want that.
They devoured the skin in an instant. They're just too quick for me to get a close look at. Let's see what'll happen with the whole chicken. I hang it from a post that I've lodged in the lake bed. So whatever goes for it has to stay at the surface.
Good. That's us. There's something at it. The chicken is moving. Something is pulling at that chicken, and there's small fish in there which every now and then scatter. Oh, right. There's one. They're all coming in. This is it. As soon as one gets stuck in, they're all in there.
The frenzy brings a fish into sight. I'm in South America, investigating the gruesome death of a man who had his face ripped off. And I've uncovered unprecedented evidence that he was killed by piranhas.
Él esté con vida antes de y las pirañas.
Is a savage new species behind the attack, or is something more sinister going on? I'm conducting a test which might give me some clues.
Oh. Right, they're all coming in. This is it. As soon as one gets stuck in, they're all in there. And they're just pulling it this way, that way. And every now and again, it's almost like a sort of freeze frame. I can just see for a fraction of a second a hump black shape out of the water. Definitely black piranhas.
As far as I know, this is behavior that's never been caught on camera before. Black piranhas, the supposedly solitary and timid members of the piranha family, in a mass feeding frenzy.
That's it. I can actually see, that was a large fish. It's gone, it's all stopped. I think they've had it. I was expecting to go in there and investigate the skeleton, but there's nothing left.
This is behavior that goes against all that was previously believed, and it puts black piranhas in the frame for the recent attacks. If studies say they're timid and solitary fish, it's time for a rewrite. It also shows me that they have the ability to change their behavior and become potential man-killers. I'm heading back to the attack site on the Rio Yata to see if this phenomenon of changing behavior could account for Oscar's horrific death there. first time I arrived in Santa Teresita, it was like a ghost town. Nearly everybody was working far away from the village. But now, many have returned. Perhaps the witness I heard about when I first came here, the person who recovered Oscar's body, has come back too.
Buenas tardes.
People know who he is and they say he's here. I'm pointed in the direction of his house. After weeks of searching, finally, someone who actually witnessed the attack.
Es Don Carmelo.
Carmelo tells me it was a day he'll never forget.
Sucedió así. Cuando yo
Finally, I hear the true story behind the tragic death of Oscar Barbosa. Carmelo was operating one of the ferries that runs across the Rio Yata. It was a hot day and he saw Oscar dive into the water.
Y de ahí él cruzaron y de ahí volvió y de ahí se largaba el río.
At first he was swimming without difficulty, but then he started struggling and sinking below the surface.
The third time he went under, Carmelo realized that this was serious, something had to be done.
Carmelo and a friend raced out to the spot where Oscar disappeared.
¡A la vuelta, la vuelta!
He tied a rope around his waist and bravely dived in. But the water was murky and he couldn't find him. He went under a second time, but nothing. The third time he started to feel his way around.
Fourth time he went down, he found a foot and hung onto it.
While bringing Oscar's body up to the surface, he felt a searing pain in his arm. Carmelo too was under attack. He still bears the scars of the wounds he endured retrieving Oscar from the bottom of the Rio Yata.
As he surfaced with the body, he said the piranhas all surfaced like a shoal of sardines or something coming up with the body.
Rápido me subí arriba y no lo largué.
By then he'd seen the damage, he'd seen where all the flesh had been eaten away, a lot of bleeding, and he said at that time, you know, Oscar was already dead.
Carmelo was attacked by the same piranhas that killed Oscar. He has no doubt about which species they were.
Do you know what type of piranha they were here?
Acá, cerca de aquí del...
And it's not the answer I was expecting. I'm in Bolivia, trying to identify what kind of piranha killed a young man in the Rio Yata. I've found a witness named Carmelo who bravely tried to save him and was himself bitten in the process. But with almost 40 species of true piranha, which one is the culprit?
Do you know what type of piranha they were here?
Acá, cerca de aquí del pecho es colorado, todo es colorado. Rojo, ya, es rojo.
He says they were brightly coloured, red, and he indicated the belly and the flanks, and there's a very clear positive ID. Those were red-bellied piranhas.
This wasn't what I was expecting to hear. Carmelo's testimony is the first time I've heard an eyewitness describe an adult human being targeted and killed by red-bellied piranhas. It's an unprecedented event and runs counter to experiments I've conducted showing that red bellies won't normally attack people or large animals. that they're not the monsters that B-movies would have us believe they are. So is this just a freak event? I have to know if this is a one-off or is something happening that's similar to the change in piranha behavior I witnessed in Suriname. Carmelo says that Oscar's is not the only attack he's come across on the river. Piranhas struck near a riverside ranch very recently. If I hurry, I might make it there before nightfall. On the way, I hear news of other attacks.
Allá más arriba de mi casa, allá ha mordido mi primo. Piraña grande así, mira.
He's saying there's big piranhas here. His cousin was bitten.
Estaba lavando su mano y se mordió.
Ah, okay.
Claro.
Yeah, he was washing his hands and something came along, took a big lump out of his hand. So he says, piranhas, you've got to watch them here.
The case against the piranhas is building. It seems that Oscar's attack was not a once-and-done incident. We just make the ranch by dusk, and the conversation soon turns to attacks.
Aquí las pirañas son agresivas, son malas, ellas miran sangre.
Culebra, a laborer, tells me that the attack Carmelo heard about happened only 6 months ago. This time it wasn't on a human, but something larger and much more powerful. 3 cowboys found a horse from a neighboring ranch that had swum across the river onto their land. They got it back into the water to return it.
It was literally just a few feet away from the bank and the piranhas attacked it. And as soon as it started bleeding, more and more piranhas came.
The cowboys desperately tried to recover the horse.
But just the time that it took them to do that, the animal was dead. Not only that, it had been hollowed out by the fish. And when they managed to get the body of the horse out of the water, there was apparently just a stream of piranhas falling out of a hole in its skin. It was that quick that it happened.
These latest stories have given me a lot of food for thought. I realize I can't deny the mounting evidence I'm faced with any longer. The piranhas here seem to be more aggressive than normal. In chaos theory, the term butterfly effect suggests that a small change, such as the tiny breeze created by butterflies' wings, can escalate into huge and unpredictable consequences. The chain of cause and effect in nature ripples from one event to another, and never more so than in the watery environment of rivers. Piranhas here are attacking healthy living people and even creatures as large as horses. But why? Perhaps something has happened in the river to provoke this change in behavior. I've seen something similar before in Papua New Guinea. The normally vegetarian pacu started attacking humans in the absence of its usual food supply. If the peaceful pacu can be transformed into a savage attacker, could something similar happen when the piranha's environment is changed? I start asking around to see if people have noticed anything that's changed in the Rio Yata. I'm soon told of a predatory fish that appeared in these waters just 20 years ago. Could its arrival have some connection to red-belly piranhas turning into man-killers? I've got a new fish to find, but will it close the case?
What's this?
I've found a couple of locals, will take me to where I might be able to catch one of these mysterious river invaders. The only other people around are gold prospectors living on dredgers in the middle of the river. The final part of the journey is a trek through jungle to a lake.
The lake apparently is an oxbow. That's to say it's a bend of the river. When the water's up, it's actually part of the river, but when the water goes down, like now in the dry season, it's cut off, so you have to come through the forest. And I can just see water now.
This is the ideal time to fish because all the lake's inhabitants are captive quarry at the very end of the dry season. But when the imminent rainy season arrives, the waters will rise up, reconnect with the river, and spread into the surrounding forest, making everything much harder to catch. No one can explain to me exactly what fish I'm after, other than it's very big. Suddenly, there's a bite.
Ow!
And almost immediately, my line breaks.
The line broke right by the reel. Right by the reel. There's a fish on it, yeah.
But the lure is still in the fish's mouth with a length of line trailing behind.
Here's the line. Bueno, okay, gracias. There he goes.
One of my guides, called Gary, deftly retrieves the free end and saves the catch.
So this peacock bass, very, very aggressive predator, as can be seen by just the size of the mouth in relation to the rest of the body. Spiny dorsal fin needs to be handled quite carefully. And the other thing to say about this, well, peacock bass, the name comes from that eye spot on the tail. That does very much look like an eye. And anything like a heron that comes along is basically going to jab the wrong end.
Peacock bass have been a staple catch for as long as people have lived here. So this isn't the mystery newcomer.
Ooh.
Over supper, Gary tells me how the locals reacted when the fish I'm after was first spotted.
When they first appeared here, they didn't know what they were, and because they're so big, they were afraid of them, and they would actually be banging on their canoes to try and scare them away.
12 años atrás.
12 años.
Sí, 12 años ya que empezamos a pescar recién el paiche, porque primero no pescamos, ¿no? Porque
Here they call them paiche, a name I'm not familiar with, and it doesn't look like I'll be catching one today. The next day, what seems like a promising start soon clouds over. Is this the very beginning of the rainy season? Since I don't know what I'm dealing with, I've decided to follow the same technique devised by the fishermen here for catching paiche. Apparently the fish is so big they've had to improvise their own grappling hooks.
They've actually taken 3 single hooks, joined them together to make a homemade treble hook, and then hanging just a couple of inches below that, this is a bearing out of a motorbike or a car, having a new incarnation as a fishing weight, attached to very heavy nylon line. Being nylon, that's actually quite thin. That's going to be interesting in your hands when that's going out at speed.
Here the fishermen look for disturbances on the water's surface, then cast their weight across it, draw in the line as quickly as possible, and hopefully snag the fish below.
So I bring it in, bring it in, bring it in. If I feel anything, and then just pull on the line as hard as I can, and that's when it could get interesting.
Snagging isn't a technique I'd normally use because of the injuries it causes to the fish. But whatever's arrived in these waters is an invasive species, and these fishermen keep whatever they catch for their community.
Minha técnica agora está buena.
The rain makes spotting surface movement extremely difficult. But once the rain eases off, we're primed for action. These disturbances can happen anywhere, so all 3 of us are constantly scanning the water, looking for where they appear.
That was right next to the boat, but I didn't feel anything.
Just thank
you.
Tienes que tirarle
No, I actually felt something here. He's saying I should have hit that harder.
To double our chances, Gary starts throwing his line out as well. If one of us hooks up, the other will help pull it in. But in a tiny and unstable boat like this, a huge fish on the end of the line could easily pull us in. I'm worried about ending up in the water, where there might also be piranhas. I keep catching tantalizing flashes of something in the water, but no definite sighting of the fish I'm after. It makes me all the more determined to catch it. Finally, Gary hooks into something. Could this be the monster that has somehow turned the local piranhas against humans? I'm in Bolivia, trying to hunt down a giant predator that's invading these remote jungles. An underwater intruder that might somehow have changed the behavior of local piranhas, making them attack humans who they used to live peacefully alongside. And there's something huge on the end of the line. Gary pulls hard, but the beast gets away. Left behind on the hook, however, is a fascinating clue, snagged from the fish's side.
That's a scale from a very big fish.
Gary tells me that this is from the fish they call the paiche. I recognize it as a scale from a huge arapaima. The scale has a striking color, and from its size, I estimate its owner was close to 300 pounds in weight and 8 feet long. This is an old adversary of mine. Arapaima are formidable predators, incredibly muscular, sheathed in flexible body armor, and almost immune to attack.
Massive female arapaima, about 150 pounds.
They attain their huge size by feeding on anything that fits into their mouths, mostly fish, which they swallow whole. And one fish is a favorite meal. Piranhas. Toothy, aggressive piranhas don't stand a chance against this armor-plated eating machine. But I can't believe this scale is here. Arapaima shouldn't be in Bolivia. This could be the significant event I've been looking for to understand the lethal change in the local piranha population, and which might account for Oscar Barbosa's tragic death. The scale is hugely revealing to me.
These are the breeding colours of the female. Dark black, vivid red fringe to the scale.
That red colour is a significant sign. If they're successfully breeding here, then these monsters may already be taking over Bolivia's waterways. There's only one way to find out what's going on below the surface. But to do that, I need different gear.
¿Qué piensa?
Now that I know what I'm fishing for, I return to my trusted rod and reel.
Aguento peixe grandes.
I've switched up the line to a higher breaking strain. But Gary doesn't believe that I'll be able to bring in an arapaima on what looks to him like such flimsy gear.
He was saying the line is very thin, it's not going to take a big fish. I was explaining, this line's actually very strong. Anyway, I put him on the angler's end, and I think there was a sort of a light bulb went on in his head. He can understand now how this equipment, although it looks fairly flimsy compared to what he uses, how this might bring in a decent-sized fish.
If we can get out on the water. But the rain is just falling harder and harder.
Just sitting here waiting for a break in this rain. At the moment it's just going without any let-up, and the guys say this could actually be the start of the wet season, and if that is the case, what that means is the lake's going to fill up, it's going to turn to muddy soup, it's going to join with the main river, and the chances of anybody catching arapaima are going to disappear until several months from now.
All I want is a little break. Finally, the rain starts to lift, but it's now late afternoon. We don't have much time before dark. If these waters are riddled with arapaima, they could be nailing the piranhas, picking off the slower, weaker ones and leaving the stronger and more aggressive fish. And if they're competing for the same food, perhaps this has forced the piranhas to behave in a much more aggressive fashion. I want to get an impression of arapaima numbers by putting a bait where they're lurking. But there's nothing doing. Gary is getting anxious. He thinks that tonight might be our last chance to fish before the relentless rainy season sets in. We agree to bring his gear into play too, and he shows me how people here fish for arapaima after dark, when the surface disturbances can't be seen.
So basically there's one main line. Every 10 yards or so, the baits are going to be suspended. They won't be on the bottom, they'll be somewhere in mid-water. The idea being that they're going to intercept the arapaima as they're actively hunting.
Fishing at night means I'm working virtually blind. But if the arapaima numbers here are as great as I suspect, then hopefully I will get a bait in front of one.
Yeah, that's a fish, that's a fish. That's good size as well. I might just glove this. All right. So there we go. This is an arapaima.
The first fish I've pulled in from these dark waters is a momentous catch, but not because of its size. This arapaima is only around 2 years old. That means these heavily armoured eating machines are breeding here, so their population could be growing every year. How many more are out there? How bad has this invasion become? We need to check the lines. As we pull them in, it becomes clear.
Oh, yeah. Here we go, there's a fish.
They're here in force.
These fish, given the right conditions, warm water, they don't need a lot of oxygen, they can absolutely take over. So once the genie's out of the bottle, you know, there's no putting it back. These things, they're here to stay. In the case of what happened on the Rio Yata that day, I see now all the possible pieces of the jigsaw. Maybe this is what caused Oscar's death, not the direct cause, but one of the factors that upset the balance.
And pushed the piranhas into becoming more aggressive, attacking anything and anyone as they fight for survival in this more competitive and dangerous river world. Maybe it was only a matter of time before someone was killed. Oscar was the unlucky one, in the wrong place at the wrong time. Caught in the perfect storm, as nature does what nature has always done. Adapt to survive. For behind-the-scenes stories, fishing games and more, go to animalplanet.com/rivermonsters.